stop eating garbage. We're gonna go over the 5 best foods that you can eat as an athlete, and we're gonna start right now. So first, what do athletes need? We have to look at field sports, endurance sports athletes, power sports athletes. Anybody who competes in any type of sport is going to need a large amount of energy. They need nutrient-dense foods to help them recover from the rigors of being an elite athlete. Athletes will need foods that are chock full of specific vitamins and minerals. We know that things like vitamin D, zinc, foods that are high in these vitamins and minerals will actually help with recovery. It'll help with sleep. It'll help you feel better throughout the day. Athletes can get their energy from higher carbohydrate-based foods. And let's go into somebody who's an endurance-based athlete, or even someone that's like a running back. If they're eating higher carbohydrates over a long period of time, let's say the length of a football game, they'll be able to produce higher amounts of power output relative to someone who might be their opposition that's eating lower carbs. So even the individual who eats lower carbs, and I'm not saying that lower carb meals are terrible, I'm saying that research will show that the running back who has a higher carbohydrate consumption before a game is likely going to be able to produce power at a higher percentage later on in the game. Same thing if we're talking about distance runners. If you look at endurance-based athletes, typically they're going to respond really, really well to higher carbohydrate nutrition plans because they burn so much energy throughout the day and inside of their training. Anecdotally, I've seen athletes perform at a much higher degree when they have better gut flora. If they're eating more carbohydrates, they're also likely gonna be eating more fiber and more microbiota accessible carbohydrates. That's gonna help with nutrient absorption because their gut is a little bit healthier. Their gut microbiome is a little bit healthier and can improve the nutrient absorption from things like vitamin D and from zinc. And then finally, athletes are generally gonna perform at a higher degree when they're on a very high protein diet. So if you're doing a lot of resistance-based training, and if you're doing a lot of rigorous training in general, you should be eating higher amounts of carbohydrates. You should be eating higher amounts of protein. Yes, higher amounts of protein. And it doesn't mean that fats are bad. It means that in the balance, in that macronutrient balance, I've seen anecdotally and in research that it's gonna be favorable to have more carbohydrates and a higher protein diet relative to a higher protein diet and a higher fat diet. So that first key food source is going to be meat or fish. And I would even recommend trying to source something from wild fish or grass-fed meats, grass-fed ruminants. I'm fortunate where my brother is a grass-fed farmer, so we have direct access to a lot of high quality meats. But what you'll end up seeing is you're gonna have meat that's higher in conjugated linoleic acid. That's a really nice fat that's actually anti-cancerous, and grass-fed meat is gonna be higher in omega-3s. Along with that, it's gonna be really, really high in protein and it tastes really good. You're gonna get a ton of B vitamins as well. Let's say you don't have access to someone who does raise poultry out on pasture, so turkeys, chickens, pheasants. Let's say that you don't have access to someone who has grass-fed beef, grass-fed sheep, grass-fed goats or pasture-raised goats. Let's say you can go to your typical grocery store like an Aldi's or a Safeway or even a Walmart to a point. And if you don't have access, still try and buy like 90% lean beef or 85% lean beef. It's still gonna help you with that overall recovery. And I do recommend eating wild fish, like I mentioned. You can source wild fish online from specific places that actually farm wild salmon, or worst case scenario, you just get farm-raised salmon, farm-raised tilapia, and you can use that to improve your overall recovery. And speaking of meat, it's easier than ever to enjoy healthy, protein-packed meals, and that's why I recommend checking out today's video sponsor, HelloFresh. HelloFresh is an online meal service that has pre-portioned meals with specific seasonal recipes. It's delivered right to your door. They even have a lot of meat products like this sweet meatloaf a la mom. I've already made this week's crusted chicken and it was absolutely phenomenal, packed with protein.
Use my link or go to HelloFresh.com and use code POGHF6491 for 65% off plus free shipping on your first box. Once you click, My description will live update to count up the purchases.
So when we have a high protein diet, it makes us a little bit more satiated. There's gonna be a higher thermic effect of foods in regards to protein. So your body will actually use more calories to digest that protein, but also if we're doing resistance-based training or if we're doing a lot of endurance-based work, we need protein to recover from that training. Okay, that's arduous training that takes a massive toll on our body. And if we have omega-3 fatty acids from that grass-fed animal, or if we have high protein, we're gonna be able to rebuild that muscle that might be damaged because we wanna increase our hypertrophy, possibly. And so that's one of the key factors here. I would also recommend having meat at least 6 to 7 times a week, 1 meal a day minimum. Some individuals might say, hey, you can get away with 4 or 5 meals a week, which is perfectly fine, but if you wanna be a world-class athlete, I would increase that total protein intake on a regular basis. So that second key food source is gonna be sweet potatoes or yams or regular potatoes. And these are food sources that are full of carbohydrates. It's also gonna be full of vitamin A, beta carotenes, and I like having my potatoes with a little bit of cinnamon or a little bit of butter, and then you add that in. Now you're getting good fats, you're getting that vitamin A, you're getting the carbohydrates, and you're gonna feel like a total madman. So how often should we eat potatoes or sweet potatoes or yams? I recommend eating them every single day, and I even like preparing them by boiling them, cooling them, boiling them again, and then cooling them again, because that increases the amount of microbiota accessible carbohydrates that are actually in the potato. My third favorite food source is going to be avocados. And I love making guacamole with avocados, tomatoes, onions, and a little bit of Tajin seasoning. And why do I love avocados? It's a double whammy of fiber and fat. If we can get a lot of our fat from food sources like grass-fed meats, and then we add in avocados, we're gonna see an improvement in our cholesterol scores. We're gonna see an improvement in our body's management of inflammation. If we can manage inflammation better because we're eating fat from good sources like grass-fed meats and avocados, we'll have less inflammation and better recovery from our training. So how often should you eat avocados, or how often should you eat guacamole? Daily? I mean, I will have at least 1 to 2 avocados daily. I do think if you have at least 1 avocado on a regular basis, again, daily, you're gonna get around 12 to 15 grams of fiber. And I've found that a lot of athletes that eat 50 to 60 grams of fiber on a regular basis feel better, and they see a direct improvement in their overall digestion. So that fourth key food source, and this is actually gonna be a meal with like 4 different food sources in it. So really we're giving you 9 or 8 different food sources in this entire video, but we're gonna start the day off right. I love soaking oatmeal overnight and then mixing in either yogurt or raw milk. And then we're gonna put in a massive amount of whey protein, so like 2 scoops of whey protein. Now, if you don't like dairy and you can't consume whey protein, you can't consume raw milk, you can use plant protein, and then you can use whatever your favorite milk replacement is, or even just water. So you can go chia seeds, oats, plant protein, water, you mix all of that together. Now you have a meal that's really, really high in carbohydrates. It's also really high in protein, and because of the chia seeds, and the main focus here is that I love chia seeds for a couple different reasons. 1, they're higher in omega-3 fatty acids. 2, they're also really, really high in fiber, along with the oats. So if you're eating oats and chia seeds, you get a double whammy with the fiber. Then you factor in that high protein meal by adding in 2 scoops of whey protein or plant protein, and you're starting the day off feeling like a total beast, and you're gonna be fully fueled as you get into that training session. Now, what do these nutrients do? It's similar to the avocados. When you have higher fiber, and when you're having omega-3 fatty acids, and if you talk about our oatmeal, I directly, when I get my blood work done, will see a positive response in my inflammatory markers. So as an athlete and as someone who's trying to recover regularly, I'm not an athlete anymore, but as athletes out there, what you want to see is that if your body's managing inflammation well, that means you're recovering really, really well. That's where the oats, the chia seeds, whey protein, those things are gonna help diminish that inflammation while also fueling your body. And so the big question becomes, how often should you have things like chia seeds or oats or whey protein? I would recommend having it every single day. I like having chia seeds on a regular basis because they're such a high fiber food, even though they do get stuck in my teeth on a regular basis as well. But eating chia seeds regularly, eating high protein regularly, that means I'm gonna feel good, my gut flora is gonna be healthy, and I'm gonna recover as well as I possibly can. Nutrition is one of the most overlooked aspects behind sports performance. It's really, really easy to forget that food isn't fuel. We're just shoving food down our throat and we don't think of the repercussions. We need to look at this as if we're an elite athlete, or if we want to be optimizing our overall performance, we have to optimize our fuel. That means we have to have a high protein diet. We have to get our fats in. We have to make sure we have a high carbohydrate diet and everything's timed really well. And I also believe that fiber needs to play an absolute pivotal role. 50 to 60 grams of fiber that you can get from avocados, chia seeds. That's gonna help your gut microbiome, which will help your nutrient absorption. So start adding these foods today on a regular basis, and you're gonna feel like a total beast with your recovery. And if you need help with your recovery, you need help with your nutrition program, click on the link down below, head over to garagestrength.com. You can pick up our high performance nutrition program that spoon feeds you meals so that you know how to plan throughout that entire week. If you want more information around food, if you want more information around training, make sure you check out our podcast, the Masters of Sport podcast, where we go deep into all these topics. Because remember, freaks, if you want to become a champion, you've always got to cultivate your power. Peace.